You're listening to the StudioPTBO podcast, where we talk all things marketing to help you build and grow your business online. Welcome to the latest episode. Thank you for tuning into another episode of the StudioPTBO podcast. We are back, and we're back at it again with another guest. I'm super excited to say that. I've been going hard with these podcasts, really with the goal and the mission to help real estate agents and entrepreneurs with marketing and mindset knowledge to help you build, grow, and scale your business in the online space. That's why we're here. That's what we're doing today. I have a very special guest that I'm excited to get to in a second here. If you are live with me, throw a live in the comment section below. If you're watching the replay, throw a replay. And if you're listening back on iTunes or Spotify, I really want to say thank you more than anything. We're really excited to chat a little bit about how you can actually grow your business in the online space. And the guest that I have with me today is very, very special. I was actually interviewed on his podcast, the Agent Podcast, and we're going to get into that. We're going to get into kind of what he's doing in the real estate space, which is really cool. Really excited to chat about that. But you know, Raymond, like, why don't you give me like a high level overview on who you are, what you do, how you got here today, and just kind of give me like kind of a high level overview backstory on who you are.
Sure. Cody, thanks for having me. First and foremost, hello, everybody. Who am I? I'm just a guy trying, man. Like, it's that simple. Married, 5 kids, 3 dogs. We have a lot of heartbeats in our house, and I'm an entrepreneur at heart. You know, I started my first business when I was 15. I've failed forward. I've had 45 plus companies. 40 have failed. 5 have done well. 2 have been sold to public companies. And I just stand up, man. Like, I get up and I try again every single day.
Let's chat about the 45 and the 5 that worked and the two that got sold to public companies. Like, tell us a little bit about that. Like, tell us a little bit about your back story with, like, in regards to business. Like, 5 businesses. What were those 5 businesses that succeeded? And like, you've done a bunch of different businesses. Like, why do you think the 5 that succeeded? Like, what did you learn from that process?
Yeah. So the backstory is I hated school. I was a horrible student. I didn't go to college and I had to survive. Right. And that's some of what drives me and propels me forward is this determination of success, right? Like being tenacious. And I don't want to use the word fearless, but there is some word about fearless. Like, I am definitely the guy who jumps off the cliff and builds the plane or the parachute or the bridge on the way down.
Mm-hmm.
And with the businesses that have been successful, if I kind of look at it in summation, my audience was very clear and I was persistent and I was resilient. You know, one company in particular was a LED lighting company. We were ahead of our time, ahead of the curve, ahead of anybody giving a crap about saving energy. And it took us 3 years to monetize that business.
Interesting. Okay.
We kept trying and we kept trying and we kept trying. And then one day it hit. And then we started to see crazy growth, like 300% a month over month over month. And, you know, we started in Los Angeles, which is where my headquarters was and where I'm originally from. And then we ended up in New York, and then we ended up in Chicago, and then we ended up overseas, and that business exploded. And we positioned ourselves as a thought leader in an industry that was saturated with lighting experts, but we did it completely different. Like, we were very disruptive to that market because we didn't go through the typical dealer distribution channels. We created our own.
What about the 45 that failed? Why do you think the 45 failed? And why do you think so many entrepreneurs, like, I think the stat is like 95% of businesses fail within 5 years. Like, why did the 45 fail? And like, what did you learn from those? What are the top 3 lessons you learned from those 45 failures?
So a lot of them failed for lack of audience definition, like really identifying who our audience and that target was, so we know how to talk to them. That's one. Number 2, poor planning, 100% poor planning. And number 3, a lot of them just burned through cash, right? They were undercapitalized from the beginning, which could go back to poor planning or not knowing your audience, depending upon, you know, how you were going to market.
Mm-hmm. What about the 2 that exited? Like, what did you learn during that? Because that's totally different. Like, vast majority of businesses never exit.
Yeah.
You know, they either die out or they get passed on potentially to like a family member. But the vast majority of business, especially real estate business, and we'll get into that, they don't really get necessarily bought out. Like they're like, I think like one of my good friends, Sharon Srivatsa, he exited Telus Properties because Douglas Elliman bought them. That's very rare, even in real estate, but it's very rare in any industry to actually exit a business. Like what were the kind of the lessons you learned in business that potentially the three that didn't exit maybe potentially ended, and the two that actually were exited? Like what were the kind of the top learning experience you had during that time?
Yeah, so the two that exited were both very disruptive companies in their space, right? So we were able to create and gather a customer base that wasn't normally a customer base in
Okay.
those industries. Um, but ironically, both of those businesses were bought for infrastructure.
Mm.
You know,
Okay.
the customer base and revenue was there, but infrastructure, specifically in one of them, was a key component where there was somebody who wanted to get into a space. They had a public shell that they had purchased, and they were looking for the right company to plug in from an operative standpoint,
Okay.
and then be able to scale by both acquisition and by unique products to the marketplace, right? So
Okay.
that's what we did. So that company bought my company. I stayed on for 2 years. We grew it 10x of what it was. And then I left that company and went on to do a bunch of other stuff.
When you're looking back at your journey, you're looking at all the businesses that you've operated and all the businesses you've ran. Obviously, you've talked about understanding your avatar, having good understanding of who you're actually trying to reach and having product market really fit. Like what else would you recommend to I know because you have the agent podcast and we're going to get into talking about that. Like how can real estate agents, because we have a lot of real estate agents that listen to this podcast and a lot of like real estate marketers that listen to the podcast. How can they, in a world of so many people coming to the table being like, well, I buy and sell, I help people buy and sell real estate. It's like, well, everyone does that. It's so hard to be disruptive in the real estate market. How can some of the things you learn from like building big businesses and exiting big businesses apply to kind of like what you do in regards to real estate market? And like very similar to, and you can bring up agent podcasts because I think what you're doing is very different in the marketplace, but how can realtors be different in the marketplace, do you think?
Yeah, stop treating yourself as a commodity, right? Because that's the problem. If I want a phone, I can go to a gas station and get a prepaid phone. I can go to an AT&T store, a T-Mobile store, Boost Mobile, Verizon, whatever. It's a commodity.
Totally.
Right? Now, do I want Apple or do I want Samsung or do I want Motorola or Nokia or whatever the case is? But some of the things that were differentiators, the companies that were both successful and I exited, is they weren't looked at as commodities. There were brands that were disruptive to the marketplace. They were brands that had personalities. They were brands that could be defined, that people knew. And that's a huge differentiator, like we're in the problem with real estate agents specifically is everyone follows everybody.
Totally.
Right? This person's doing that, so I'm going to do that. This person's doing that, so I'm going to do that. Stop following. Honestly, like start thinking for yourself. What do you want to do? Right? Like when I first started the agent podcast, as an example, which kind of happened on accident, I didn't want to do video. Not that I was necessarily afraid of it, but I'm like, dude, I want to focus on audio. Like I want an unbelievable audio experience. Right. And then for me, almost immediately that started to build my confidence. Now, for the podcast, it's a Zoom meeting because I want to interact with the person face to face. I want to connect on a human level.
100%.
The podcast is a byproduct of that. I want the relationship, right? So like when I interviewed you or you interviewing me, I'm interested in the relationship. I'm interested in the long game. Like how can we help each other? What can we do together? How can we grow together? How can we learn from each other's failures, right? Like successes are great, but you learn from the failures. That's how you get to success. So going back, don't be a commodity. Be a brand, but you have to be yourself to do that. Don't try to be something you're not, right? So if you're scared of TikTok, but you really like Instagram because you can be behind the scenes and be a keyboard warrior, so to speak. Okay, fine. Then focus on Instagram.
You might want to go to Twitter then if you want to be a keyboard warrior.
Oh yeah, that's true, 100%.
Yeah, that's the best.
But
That's the best keyboard warrior platform for sure.
yeah,
That's hilarious.
you get my point, dude. Like,
Yeah, 100%.
if you don't want to be on video, or you're not good at it, or you're not confident yet, don't start on TikTok. Focus on
Yeah.
Instagram or another platform that you can figure out who you are and who you want to be to your people. Because once you do that, then you start to decommoditize yourself. Once you start to decommoditize yourself, then you're going to be more comfortable getting out there, and your people will come to you and you will find your people. Like, that's just how it works. Like, we as humans complicate the crap out of everything.
Yeah, totally.
Right. So the question that I ask myself every day is, how can I uncomplicate my life? How can I do this better? How can I do this simpler? Can I streamline this? Can I get one step out of that process? You know, and that mentality or that mindset has part of what's allowed me to have these successful companies and make these exits.
Can we talk a little bit about what you said around, you were kind of I guess like you maybe use the word afraid, but you were skeptical about doing video. And I find that I talk to a lot of realtors, a lot of entrepreneurs, just a lot of marketers who are afraid to start with video, and they're afraid to start on a platform and maybe they're afraid to start small. Could be the issue. Maybe they're just afraid of like not knowing what to say. What advice would you have for somebody that like is just starting? Because like you've done now, I think close to 50 plus podcasts with your agent podcast, and you had multiple successful businesses, and you've obviously failed a lot, and you're very forthcoming about the fact that you failed a lot. How can people just start? Because it's easy for us to say just start, but like what steps, like as you think back to how you started the agent podcast, what are like three practical steps that you took to actually start? Because I think so many people say just start, but like, what does that actually look like? And I think that could provide a ton of value to people that are like, I want to start, but I don't know how to start, and I'm afraid to start. So, and they go through this cyclical cycle of like, and they do nothing. They end up in inaction. What would you say?
Yeah. So you end up in your own head, right? Going through this cycle of making excuses for yourself is the reality of the situation. So number one, don't judge yourself. That's number one, because who really cares? Right. And if people are judging you, those aren't your people. Focus on the people that are going to support you. And think about it this way. If you don't do this and you don't show up for somebody, what about that one person that you might help? What about that one person that you can talk to that understands what you have to say or relates to your story? And for me, that's what the podcast both came from and turned into. It came from me having unbelievable conversations with people that I'm just like, dude, everybody needs to hear this, right? Because it's going to impact somebody. Number two, it's turned into, it's not just about real estate. Yes, I'm talking to real estate agents or mortgage people or home inspectors or whatever in the real estate space. But these are humans, man.
Yeah.
These are people that have a life and have kids and have issues and problems and challenges and didn't start where they are right now, right? Like, we all start at 0 followers. We all start at 0 downloads. Like, nobody's special. Yeah, maybe I'll go to 5 and somebody else goes to 5,000, but good for them. It doesn't mean I can't get there. It just means that my path is different, right? So get out of your own way. That's number one, because you might be able to help somebody, right? So if I interview a group of 100 real estate agents and I ask them the question, why do you sell real estate? Very few are going to say, to pay my mortgage, to pay my bills, to put my kids through college, right? Most of them are going to say, because I want to help people or I want to make an impact. And while both are true, people say that they want to make an impact. People say that they want to help people. So do it. Put your money where your mouth is. Who cares about being judged? Stop judging yourself and pick up the camera. And take a picture and take a video. And you can start small. That's the awesome thing about TikTok or Reels, right? Like, you can do shorts. Keep it simple. Take a picture of that glass of wine at dinner. Take a selfie with your partner, you know, throw some video of your kids up there. Like, dude, this is stuff that I'm still working on. I am by no means the showcase social media person at all. Like, I'm still working on it, but I'm trying to get better and I'm consciously thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it takes time, and it's okay for it to take time. It's okay for it to be a process. But if you don't start, where are you going to be in a year, 3 years, 5 years? So
Totally.
for me, like, I'm in a hurry to get to that next version of myself.
Yeah,
And the
that's
only
good.
way I do that is by putting myself in an uncomfortable zone in
Mm-hmm.
order for me to have growth and get feedback, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I've been fortunate. I didn't know crap about podcasting. I didn't consider myself a public speaker.
Yeah.
I just started talking to people and being honest and transparent. Like, look, man, I've tried all this stuff. Most of it didn't work. Some of it worked. I've built wealth. I've lost wealth. I've built wealth. I've lost wealth. Like, it's all been part of the cycle and the game.
Yeah.
But I can't get to where I want to go unless I try. Right. So, like, that's my driver. I just want to try, and I'll figure it out as I go.
It's so unique. I'll figure it out as I go, I think, is something that, like, the uncertainty sometimes holds people back from starting. And like you said, like, being afraid to start small, I think, is a really key element to why people don't start at all, because, like, they're like, oh, I might only have 10 followers, I might only have 10 views, I might only get 1,000 views. And it's like that, like, I love what you said about the one person, because I think that is something that I believe so wholeheartedly about, where it's like, especially in a business, like, I think that, if I could speak to kind of our listeners for a second, I think the biggest thing from a business, like, if you have to look at content production as a tool that can help you drive business. And if you look at it that way versus trying to look at it as like, I need 1 million followers in order to drive business, it's not true. You don't need 1 million followers in order to drive business. You need to show up for the people that are currently watching you, because those are the people that are going to actually drive business. So from a business perspective or a real estate perspective, you don't need to have 25,000 followers in order to grow your business through content production. You can have 1,000, you can have 500, and still drive business through content production. But what, for you, I guess, from the Agent podcast, you said you kind of landed into it, and you landed into kind of interviewing people. Like, what inspired it, and like, why do you feel like you keep doing it, like, on a consistent basis?
Yeah. So I'm going to work backwards from your questions. I keep doing it because I love it, man. Like, I love meeting people and talking to people, and the messages that I get from people after episodes are published. Like, I started this in September of last year, so it's been about 6 months. I've interviewed over 120 plus agents.
Amazing.
I've published about 52 episodes, and I'm booked through April, right? From 3 social media posts ever. No
Right?
advertising, only 3 social media posts
Man,
asking, hey, you want to be on a podcast?
totally.
Nothing fancy, real simple, just text and some color behind it. And there's just so many stories out there of, like, people that have gone through real stuff, man, like real hard times that have recovered. Like, I think it's Les Brown that has a saying, if you can look up, you can get up. So get up. And that's what I see over and over. And that's the driver for me. That's the inspiration, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
there's no excuse for anybody to want.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what I've learned in the last 6 months, specifically, of hearing these unbelievable stories from brain injuries and learning, having to walk and write and read again at 30 years old, to
Man.
being millions of dollars in debt and losing everything, or having spouses pass. Like, unbelievable stories of these resilient, inspiring people. Right. So I'm talking to these people, and I'm no different. I have my own challenges and issues and, problems I create for myself. Like, I'm like, dude, if these people can do it, why can't I?
Yeah.
Right. And, like, okay, how can I help somebody do it better? How can I help somebody take that next step? What does it look like?
Mm-hmm.
Now, it came from me pivoting my business during COVID.
Okay.
COVID hit. I own a paint company with a patent on a special coating for outdoor structures. We had a huge contract with a major player. Stock market crashed. All their service and maintenance budgets went away. And that's it. That was done. And I was banking on that, right?
Yeah.
Second part of that is, I've owned a digital marketing and consulting firm for about 12 years. 80% of our business is consulting for businesses. The rest was done for you services. just to keep it in-house so we could have, a client could have one phone call. And a lot of that business went away and I had to pivot. I had always been a real estate investor for 30 years in 7 different states. I've loved it. Real estate has single-handedly funded my companies.
Interesting.
Even the ones that have failed and I've lost it and had to go build a portfolio again. So I have leverage in the future, right? It's been this cycle for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I started coaching real estate agents one-on-one. And then I started a boot camp and membership. And then I was just having these unbelievable conversations with people. So I focused on the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And I started giving the boot camp and some courses away just for free to help people. But what this has done is it's inspired my wife and I to completely change how we're running businesses and moving 100% into real estate.
That's so cool.
Right. So now we have the agent podcast. I'm still working on my paint thing in the background.
Yeah.
And my wife and I are starting a team in Chicago and launching our real estate business. Still an investor, will always be.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm starting another podcast called the Chicago Podcast.
Love it.
That will be hyper local for Chicago-based businesses to build a community and give a voice.
Yeah.
For all the reasons we're talking about, right? Because
totally.
I mean, business owners all day long that are afraid to share their story.
Yeah.
Because where do I start? I don't have a platform. I don't know what to say. Okay, here, I'll give you a platform. I'll give you a voice and I'll lead you. But people need to hear that. You need to understand what your neighbor who owns a Dunkin' Donuts went through to get that Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's impactful. Nothing is easy. It's all work.
Totally.
Right? It's all work. So what does that look like to help somebody else get through that work? And that's how I view the podcast for real estate agents. Because whether you're a new agent or a seasoned agent, there's something there for you.
I love it. And I've obviously been following your journey. To see the fact that you've done 50 podcasts is absolutely incredible. I want to chat a little bit about real estate investing because I think that we're in such a really interesting market right now where it's and I actually had one of our clients on podcast recently where it said, there's a shortage of inventory, but he kind of chatted about it's just the shortage of inventory is the fact that houses are selling so quickly. And that's where the shortage is kind of being created in a lot of markets. I'm curious to kind of get your take on real estate investment and how it helped you fund your positions now and how it helped you, where did you start? If we can kind of go back to the very beginning, how did you buy your first property? What did that look like? Obviously you're in, you're doing the real estate selling now, but can we chat a little bit about the investing and why somebody should consider getting into investing and what that would look like?
So I bought my first property at 19 years old. It was a condo in Thousand Oaks, California. Mm-hmm. It was $65,000.
Damn.
I put 10 grand into it. That property, when I bought it, was in a lawsuit between the original builder and the homeowners association because the patios and the stairways were crumbling and falling. When I saw my unit, it was being used as an office by contractors. So you could imagine what that was like.
Yeah.
And it was on the second floor and I had to use a ladder to get up to see it. So I bought it. I closed on it. I renovated it myself. I lived in it for, I think, 5 years. I refied it. Its value, when I bought it, like I said, I bought it as a foreclosure, but its value was probably 130, 140 grand maybe at the time. When I sold it, it was over 300,000 5 years later.
Crazy.
I refied it. I pulled that cash out. I bought 2 more houses. One of them I lived in, and then I rented the other 2 properties out.
Yeah.
Right. And that's how I got started. So it was the ability to buy something, use it, and hold it. It was also California, right? So the inflation is high, goes quick. And then I started doing other things, right? I started buying other properties, started understanding deals. I started looking for more deals. I started to take on partners. And again, sometimes it worked, sometimes I didn't. Now my strategy today is different. I'm only investing in multifamily. I don't want to
Okay.
own
Yeah.
duplexes, quads, single family homes. I'm uninterested in that. I want bigger properties that are actual businesses in a box. Like that's how I
Totally.
term them, where they can qualify for loans on their own. They have their own P&L. They're doing what they're doing. And especially in the world we live in today, I feel like long-term, that's going to be a good investment strategy.
Somebody with cash that is looking to park cash, would you recommend that they first learn how to do family type homes, like in different, like maybe Section 8 properties, for example? Or would you say, like, if they have cash sitting and they're a business owner, and maybe I'm like selfishly asking this for myself, would you recommend as an investor going and learning how to do um, multi-residential, or going into what you're saying, this business in the boxes, trying to find partners and going that direction?
I would really get clear on what you want to do long-term.
Yeah.
And what the goal is, and go find somebody who's doing it and partner with them and give them your money.
Okay.
Right? Like today, if I had $5 million, I'd go to Grant Cardone.
Fair enough.
Right?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I? He knows what he's doing. He's huge at this point. He knows leverage. That's where I would go.
Okay.
Say, look, dude, I got 5 mil. What can we do? What does that return look like?
Mm-hmm.
Right? What's my worst case scenario? What's my best case scenario?
Totally.
Right? How do we protect this? What's the downside? I would ask those questions.
Mm-hmm.
Going
Okay.
back to where we started,
Yeah.
one thing I will share is don't reinvent the wheel if you don't have to.
Okay.
Right? So if you have cash and you want to park it, don't learn the hard way. There's no reason to. Park your cash somewhere that makes sense and make money. Because do you really want to learn the ins and outs of how to do this, or do you just want your cash to grow so you can have freedom and build multiple businesses or run more podcasts?
Yeah.
Right? Like you have to ask those questions of what the goal really is. Like, I am not a money manager. I don't want to manage money.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make money, but I don't want to manage money.
Totally.
Right? Like I have no desire to use QuickBooks or Epicor or any of that crap, dude. Like I don't want anything to do with it.
Yeah.
I want to create.
I like what you say about enthusiasm, because I think that question, that like it's kind of like you wrap it all up in enthusiasm, where it's like, I could go and learn this, but like, I'm not enthusiastic about going and having to relearn this, where it's like, I think that it's so important, no matter where you're at in business, to kind of like find something that you're enthusiastic about, that, and it may be real estate, it might be buying businesses, it might be, finding something else, like, finding ways to park cash. But when it comes to like real estate investing, like right now in the marketplace, are there any places that you're looking at right now in North America, or in the US, that you're like, these are really great opportunities right now?
Yeah. Texas, southern states like Tennessee, Georgia, and Alabama specifically. Mm-hmm. And Florida, I think it's a very saturated market because there's a lot of investors there. So it's more, maybe not saturated, competitive market.
Totally.
But I think where, like in Alabama, as an example, there's a lot of government jobs and government facilities that have been relocated over the last couple of years to Alabama.
Okay.
Right. So there's a housing shortage in Alabama. It's a good place to be because there's opportunity.
Okay.
Right. Same with Texas. So you look at a US map and you say, okay, here's all the states people are leaving. Here's all the states people are going.
Yeah.
What does the housing situation look like there? And what is it going to look like for the next 5 years? Right. Yeah. Because nothing's permanent. You don't have to buy something and then hold it indefinitely. You can be in and out in 2 years or 3 years if the deal makes sense for you.
And how do you recommend people that are just starting to understand the deal? Like I'm a huge fan of coaches, and like, like I coach with Taki Moore. He's my business coach. So I understand the business coach, but how do people get, like, what would be the first steps that you would take in order to get educated to become an investor today? Like, to not reinvent the wheel, where would you go?
Yeah. So there's no shortcut for learning. Right. And I'm a big believer. There's a saying out there that say words don't teach. And I'm a big believer in that. Okay. Words don't teach. And that is not how I learn. I learn by doing. But by doing, you're going to make mistakes.
Totally.
And things are going to happen and crap's going to go south, right? And that's okay. So the question I ask is, what is the best possible means to take a shortcut to where I want to go, right? Because obviously the distance between A and B, the quickest way is a straight line. So that's what we're trying to do. So to your point, yes, hire a coach. You know, one platform that comes to mind for real estate investing, like grassroots guerrilla style, is Bigger Pockets. Like, dude, that is an awesome community. It's unbelievable. The knowledge is unbelievable. The support systems are unbelievable. The Facebook groups are unbelievable. And all the books are great.
Mm-hmm.
And they're written like in very simple terms, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm a brand new investor, that's where I would go. Bigger Pockets,
Bigger
100%.
Pockets.
And the first thing I would focus on is vocabulary. Learn the vocabulary. Once you learn the vocabulary, start looking at what are typical deal structures. What does a single family home look like? What does a flip look like? What does a small duplex or triplex look like? How do those numbers pencil out? Are there pros and cons to different ones, right? Like it just depends where the market is and what market you're in. And those are two different things, right? Because the market you're in is going to have cycles. So then the question becomes is where is that market right now and where is it going? Right? It's no different than hockey, right?
Totally.
You don't skate to the puck, you skate to where the puck is going.
Yeah. 100%.
Right? And that's the goal with real estate. You want to skate to where the real estate is going.
Ton of value. Ton of value. Like just got my, like, I love what you said about vocabulary, because I think that can be said about any industry.
100%.
You know, real estate industry, like, you know, you get into real estate, understanding, you know, especially when you enter, we chatted earlier about like entering markets and entering, like having a productized offering for a specific niche or specific avatar, and understanding their vocabulary, understanding the way that they speak, I think is invaluable. Man, today was a ton of fun. We covered a lot of things. If somebody were to want to reach out to you, they want to learn a little bit more about your podcast, a little bit more about Chicago, where could they reach you? Like, where's the best place that we could send them?
RaymondSjolseth.com. First name, last name.com. That's the best option. You'll find the podcast there. You'll be able to get in touch with me. You'll find my socials there. Everything's there. Raymond, I can help you. Reach out. Don't be shy.
Reach out to him. 100%. Raymond, honestly, I appreciate everything today. I really do appreciate the chat today. Highly recommend, if you're in the Chicago area, reach out to him, especially if you're looking to buy, sell, invest in real estate. Reach out to Raymond. And I want to say thank you more than anything for tuning into another episode of the StudioPTBO podcast. Really, my goal this year is to provide a massive amount of value back to the entrepreneur and real estate community with marketing and mindset knowledge to help you build, grow, and scale your business online. I really do appreciate your attention today. We'll see you soon. Thanks for tuning in another episode. Have a great day, guys.
Thanks, Cody.
Bye, guys.